Hoo-yah!
Howdy there, fellow nerds. Today I'm going to cover 3 things that you should be doing, especially if you're a newer programmer, but even if you've been around a while, to be a better programmer. 3 tips and tricks, and a lot of them are just a way of thinking. So let's get right into it. Number 1 is you need to solve the problem outside of code first. So what do I mean by that? Don't jump in to just start typing code right away. Don't get into just Visual Studio or Eclipse or Android Studio or whatever it is and just start typing away. You need to have a plan of how you are going to go after your projects. Let me give you a great example. Our company, we make a lot of mobile apps. So we do Android and iOS versions of every app. If we didn't plan ahead of time and I assigned an iOS developer and an Android developer, say I'm the Android developer, and then I have an iOS developer, and we both look at a design and we set off to build it, our apps are going to be structured nothing alike. Like we are going to solve problems differently. We're going to both have gone down and set up a different architecture for the platform. That is not the way to do it. You want to solve the problem before you start coding. I've actually got to the point probably in the last year where I'm getting down to the very first 2 weeks of any project, a programmer is not allowed to code unless they're prototyping out an idea. And I think that should hold true to even if you're doing something small. Don't just start coding. Plan your project out. Look to the future a little bit. Make sure how you're modularizing things and how you're building things will actually support where you want to go or where your client wants to go. Trust me, this is very, very, if you've been around a while, you're probably like, that's common sense. But no, like I teach a lot of programmers, and one of the first things they try to do is just start coding immediately. Please just take a minute back, think about the problem, and then move forward. All right, so let's get into number 2. And number 2 is one that I would say is kind of is probably a no-brainer, but at the same time, I think it's something that is constantly overlooked. And that is documentation. You know, with number 1, I said plan out your thoughts and everything ahead of time. Number 2 is let's actually document that. And what do I mean by documenting? Programmers are notoriously bad at going back and checking documentation. But I'm talking about you need to have your project documented to the point that you feel comfortable handing it to someone that has never touched the project and they can pick it up and understand how to set up their build environment, how to actually run the test cases that are against it, how to install and set up any external dependencies that need to be there. But on top of that, the thought process of why you did things the way you did, and document in a way that if you were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, someone else could pick it up and in a matter of days be as productive as you are. This is one that I struggle with quite heavily with a lot of the engineers I work with because they have this mentality that if you're not coding, you're not being productive. And that is so not true. Like you need to spend the time planning ahead of time, but with that comes a lot of documentation. When I talk about documentation, a lot of people go to functional requirements and business requirements, all very, very important. But to be honest with you, in my experience as a programmer, that's not as important to a programmer, and they're not the ones that are going to be writing the business requirements typically. Now, it does happen, but what ends up happening more times than not is a developer jumps in, they're building a project, something happens, maybe his wife has a baby, or maybe a kid gets sick and he's out. We got to try to get another programmer in there. We're getting to take over his role, and it is a mess. It is a nightmare because he hasn't taken the time to facilitate setting it up in such a way that anyone can take on. This is something that will move you ahead in the world. And don't think of it as job security. Think about it as like you are building something to make your company better, to make your product better. Specifically for your first job, you want to make sure that you are setting everyone up for success, because if everyone succeeds, you will succeed. And I'll say number 3. Number 3 is do not be afraid to fail. So many programmers, so many of them that I work with are scared to do anything because it might break things. We have environments set up in such a way that you can make mistakes 100 times and it won't impact anything. It won't impact, you can roll back, you can just get rid of that code. My favorite thing is when you don't know something, you try stuff. You experiment, but do it in a way knowing that you're going to throw it away. That's part of the R&D, that's part of the planning, that's part of the prototyping that needs to happen. If you are trying to fix a bug or you're trying to improve something, just know that if you make a mistake, it is okay. There is a, I forget what the saying is, but it's almost like a paralyzing effect, where I've worked with developers that were so nervous about doing anything, they just didn't do anything. And you have to overcome that. You are better off being strategic in what you push to production, and don't be afraid to put whatever you want, like on when you're testing dev. Like break stuff because then you know how to do it right. One of my favorite things is hurry up and fail so you can do it quicker, correctly. So you can do it correctly quicker would be the right way to say it. And I believe with all my heart that it is the best way to be successful as a programmer. If you aren't willing to make a mistake, if you aren't willing to be wrong, then programming is probably not for you, because everything we do on a day in and day out basis is typically new. It's stuff that we've never done before. And if you are doing the same thing over and over again, that's good for you, but that's not the world that I live in. The world I live in is we're solving problems that probably no one else has solved before. Or we're dealing with technologies that are new and shifting things around, and like documentation's poor for external things that we're trying to use. So you have to just experiment and you figure out what works. You run tests, set up those tests, make sure that everything's working right, take back what you learned, now write your production code. And you will be so successful. All right, guys, let me know if you like these series. To me, it's so important to just kind of sit back and think about what it's like to be a programmer and how you have to approach the world. And leave me a thumbs up and a comment below if you have any other tips and tricks that you would like to share with anybody that's watching this. Otherwise, guys, peace out and see you next time.